Sure is nice exercising freedom of navigation in the South China Sea.
Hi, Squidward.
The question of how the Chinese or Russian navies could theoretically overcome the United States Navy at sea requires a blend of strategic ingenuity, technological parity or superiority, and innovative tactics to exploit vulnerabilities in the USN's operations. This video will explore possible scenarios where such a victory might be conceivable. But first, a quick background on the three fighters. The United States Navy, USN.
You hold him off! I'll get the door!
I ain't shooting this thing. I hate guns.
Surface Fleet.
He shot.
My cool boats.
Son of a bitch.
Holy shit!
The United States Navy is the world's largest and most advanced naval fighting force. With a lasting history of global dominance of the seas since the end of World War II, it fields approximately 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, which combined with their respective air wings, serve as the cornerstone of its offensive power projection capabilities. Additionally, the USN fields over 70 submarines, including ballistic missile submarines, SSBNs, and attack submarines, SSNs. It operates an array of advanced surface combatants, included but not limited to guided missile destroyers, cruisers, and littoral combat ships, along with possessing the second largest air force in the world, equipped with state-of-the-art fifth-generation aircraft, such as the F-35C Lightning II. The USN's logistical and support capabilities are unmatched, with a global network of bases and replenishment ships, ensuring sustained operations across vast distances. Furthermore, its integrated command structure, such as the United States Fleet Forces Command, enhances its ability to coordinate complex operations and project its power across the globe. The People's Liberation Army Navy, PLAN. The People's Liberation Army Navy has grown exponentially in recent years, becoming the world's largest navy by number of hulls, but not yet by total displacement. While its technological edge may lag slightly behind that of the USN in certain areas, it has significantly modernized its fleet in modern times. The PLAN fields 2 operational aircraft carriers, with a third under construction, and is investing in fifth-generation aircraft like the J-15 and J-35 for carrier operations. China's emphasis on anti-access area denial A2AD capabilities is notable. Its arsenal includes the DF-21D carrier killer weapon system, its own classes of ballistic missile submarines, and an extensive array of long-range surface-to-surface missile-equipped combatants. Additionally, China leverages a robust network of artificial islands in the South China Sea for logistical and operational advantages in that area of operations. The PLAN is in the process of building a true blue water navy, and it is likely that within the coming decades, the PLAN will surpass the USN's total displacement. The Russian Navy.
Cora, before you go, will you tell
The Russian Pacific Fleet.
goodbye?
Do what now?
I said tell
The Russian Pacific Fleet.
goodbye.
By fleet.
The Russian Navy, while smaller and relatively less modernized than the USN and PLAN, retained significant strengths, particularly in submarine warfare. Russia's fleet includes highly capable ballistic missile submarines and advanced nuclear-powered attack submarines. Its surface fleet includes aging but heavily armed cruisers like the Kirov class, and new frigates and corvettes equipped with caliber cruise missiles present a very real and present danger to any surface fleets they may engage with. Russia's strategic doctrine emphasizes asymmetric warfare, including the use of cyber warfare, electronic warfare, and unconventional tactics to counter technologically superior adversaries. The Navy also benefits from Russia's strategic position, with access to key maritime choke points like the Black Sea and the Arctic. Scenario 1. Leveraging A2AD in the South China Sea. The possibility of a theoretical naval engagement between the United States and China, in which China defeats the United States, is a scenario that has been extensively debated amongst strategists, policymakers, and military analysts. Such a conflict would likely revolve around control of the Indo-Pacific, particularly the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait, regions of significant geopolitical tension and strategic importance. This exploration delves into how China might prevail in such a scenario, considering its strategic advantages, technological advancements, and asymmetric warfare capabilities. The South China Sea, often described as the epicenter of potential U.S.-China conflict, is a critical maritime region. It is home to vast reserves of oil and gas, fisheries, and some of the world's busiest shipping lanes. Control of this area not only grants economic advantages, but also significant military leverage. For China, the South China Sea represents a core national interest, a region integral to its security and economic survival. Conversely, the United States views the freedom of navigation in these waters as vital to its global influence and the security of its allies in Asia. The geographic proximity of China to the South China Sea provides it with a home field advantage. Unlike the United States, which must project power across the Pacific, China's military assets are stationed within or near the conflict zone, offering logistical and operational benefits. A cornerstone of China's approach to deterring or defeating the U.S. Navy lies in its anti-access area denial strategy. This strategy aims to make it prohibitively costly and dangerous for U.S. forces to operate in or near China's sphere of influence. The A2AD system leverages advanced weapons and technologies, including but not limited to anti-ship ballistic missiles, ASBMs. The DF-21D and DF-26 missiles, often referred to as carrier killers, are designed to strike U.S. aircraft carriers and other large vessels at ranges of over 1,500 kilometers. By targeting high-value assets, such as fleet carriers, China could neutralize U.S. naval power projection capabilities in the South China Sea. While these systems have been untested in combat, they pose a very real and evolving threat to any surface fleet attempting to conduct operations within their range. Integrated Air Defense Systems, IADS. China's robust air defense network, including systems like the HQ-9 and S-400, can protect critical maritime areas from U.S. aerial and missile strikes. However, the effect these systems have on stealth aircraft has yet to be seen. Submarines and mines. China operates one of the world's largest fleets of submarines, including quiet diesel-electric variants ideal for operations in the South China Sea. Additionally, extensive minefields could hinder U.S. naval movements. China's advanced cyber capabilities can disrupt U.S. command and control systems, communications, and even weaponry. Electronic warfare systems could jam or deceive U.S. sensors, crippling its situational awareness. By using their network of state actors, discourse could be sown amongst the American populace or rank and file of the military, delaying military response and or reducing the will to fight a conflict that may be seen as foreign in nature. In this scenario, tensions rise over Taiwan or the South China Sea, and both sides mobilize forces. China, anticipating a U.S. response, deploys its naval, air, and missile forces to key locations. Artificial islands fortified with airstrips, missile batteries, and radar systems become staging grounds for operations. Simultaneously, Chinese cyber units launch a campaign against the U.S. military and social media networks, seeking to degrade intelligence, disrupt communications, and plant seeds of doubt about the current evolving situation. China also leverages its civilian maritime forces, including the People's Armed Forces Maritime Militia and the Coast Guard. The conflict begins with a rapid escalation. China's first move is a preemptive missile barrage. Precision strikes cripple runways, fuel depots, and command centers, delaying the U.S. response. Concurrently, Chinese forces deploy long-range ASBMs against approaching U.S. carrier strike groups, potentially disabling or sinking key vessels before they reach the theater. China's submarines play a pivotal role, using stealth to ambush U.S. surface groups. Their cruise missiles further degrade U.S. naval forces and cripple several large surface ships, preventing the USN from launching retaliatory airstrikes using their naval aircraft. In the air, China's fifth-generation fighters, such as the J-20, operate in conjunction with drones and electronic warfare assets to dominate the battlespace. As the engagement unfolds, China's strategy centers on controlling key choke points and denying U.S. forces access to contested waters. Its extensive use of mines, submarines, and missile batteries creates a red zone in the South China Sea, effectively isolating Taiwan or other strategic targets. With U.S. forces operating at the end of extended supply lines, China leverages its proximity and logistical advantages to sustain operations. Cyber attacks and electromagnetic pulse weapons further degrade U.S. capabilities. The disruption of satellite communications and GPS systems with cyber and kinetic weapon systems renders U.S. forces reliant on traditional methods of navigation and targeting, reducing their combat effectiveness in theater. With the U.S. Navy unable to gain a foothold in the region, China consolidates its position. Its forces encircle Taiwan or establish de facto control over disputed territories, force the United States to consider a negotiated settlement due to low popular support at home, effectively acknowledging China's dominance in the region. China's geographic advantage enables rapid reinforcement and resupply, while U.S. forces must operate at great distances, relying on vulnerable supply chains. China's geographic advantage enables rapid reinforcement and resupply, while U.S. forces must operate at great distances, relying on vulnerable supply chains. While nuclear-powered vessels can effectively be on station indefinitely, food, fuel, and munitions must be replenished, even more so if casualties and high munitions usage, such as if retaliatory strikes against mainland Chinese facilities, takes place. China has invested heavily in next-generation technologies, most importantly their ballistic missile technology, including hypersonic systems, which could overwhelm U.S. defenses. The USN's SM-3 missile has been reported as being able to intercept hypersonic weapons, but this is yet to be seen in combat. By avoiding direct confrontation with superior U.S. forces and instead focusing on asymmetric methods, China can exploit U.S. vulnerabilities by avoiding direct conventional confrontation, chipping away slowly at naval assets in the region, avoiding one large decisive battle, favoring several smaller victories. The prospect of high casualties and the potential loss of capital ships, like aircraft carriers, could deter U.S. political leaders from committing fully to a protracted conflict far from the shores of the United States. How the American populace would react to losing a fleet carrier with all hands, more than the total KIA in 20 years in Afghanistan, is yet to be seen. Historically, however, I should note, is that the American people and government tend to react poorly when other nations mess with their ships. The U.S. may face difficulties rallying allies to its cause, particularly if China uses economic leverage, coercion, and propaganda to sow division amongst regional partners. Despite the above advantages, achieving a decisive victory over the U.S. Navy would not be without challenges. The United States possesses unmatched global power projection capabilities, a vast network of alliances, and a technological edge in some areas such as stealth and nuclear submarines. Additionally, prolonged conflict could strain China's economy and invite international condemnation, potentially isolating Beijing from its international trading partners. However, this effect would likely be minimal, as China's stranglehold on global production, industrial and wealth reserves, and autocratic command doctrine would allow it to persevere much longer than a rival, similar democratic power, all things considered. A theoretical naval engagement involving Russia and China against the United States presents a dramatic escalation in global tensions and a scenario of unprecedented complexity. This hypothetical conflict would involve two of the United States' principal rivals combining their maritime, aerial, and technological capabilities to challenge U.S. naval dominance. We will explore how this second scenario might unfold, under what conditions Russia and China could achieve victory, and the potential implications. The convergence of Russian and Chinese interests against the United States is rooted in shared concerns about U.S. global dominance and influence in their respective regions. While China's strategic focus lies in the Indo-Pacific, particularly the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait, Russia's primary objectives revolve around asserting dominance in the Arctic, the Black Sea, and the Eastern Mediterranean. In a joint conflict, these regions could become interconnected theaters, stretching U.S. resources and forcing it to divide its forces. The combined geographic advantage of Russia and China allows them to operate from their own respective interior zones. using their proximity to key theaters of conflict to concentrate forces and sustain logistics. Russia and China bring complementary strengths to such a conflict. As we mentioned earlier, China contributes anti-access area denial capabilities, a massive naval fleet, and advanced missile technologies, while Russia provides robust submarine warfare, long-range precision strikes, and experience in hybrid and asymmetric warfare. A formidable submarine fleet, including nuclear-powered attack submarines and ballistic missile submarines. Hypersonic weapons such as the Zircon missile capable of potentially bypassing U.S. missile defenses. Advanced air defense systems including the S-4 and S-500. Arctic ports and icebreaker fleets enabling control of northern maritime routes. By coordinating these assets, Russia and China could create multiple fronts, forcing the U.S. to spread its forces thin and respond to simultaneous threats. The conflict begins with rising tensions in multiple regions. In the Indo-Pacific, China escalates its pressure on Taiwan, while in Europe, Russia intensifies its activities in Ukraine or the Baltic region. The two nations coordinate a series of provocations designed to overload U.S. decision-making. Cyber attacks target U.S. military networks, critical infrastructure, and satellites, degrading U.S. situational awareness. State-funded actors provoke political discourse within the U.S. government and populace, delaying responses from relevant officials. Russia and China deploy naval and air assets to key choke points. China fortifies the South China Sea and positions its fleet to block or harass U.S. forces attempting to access Taiwan. Russia moves submarines into the North Atlantic and Arctic, threatening NATO supply lines and the U.S. eastern seaboard from potential ballistic missile strikes. The goal of these preparatory actions is to preemptively neutralize U.S. power projection and sow confusion. The conflict begins with synchronized attacks in the South China Sea, the Arctic, and the North Atlantic. As I have already discussed in a hypothetical conflict limited to China and the United States, in the South China Sea, China launches a massive missile strike targeting U.S. bases in Guam, Japan, and allied territories such as the Philippines. A coordinated attack using ASBMs to target U.S. carrier strike groups en route to the region. Hypersonic missiles in combination with sea and surface-launched ballistic missiles overwhelm U.S. defense systems. Swarms of Chinese drones create an area of denial to U.S. forces, forcing them to expend more of their munitions. Disruption of U.S. logistic chains forced them to limit their engagements, forcing them to expend more of their munitions. However, now with the inclusion of Russian forces deploy submarines and surface ships equipped with the Zircon hypersonic missile to target U.S. naval forces and infrastructure in the Arctic. Russia leverages its extensive icebreaker fleet to secure control of northern sea lanes, disrupting U.S. and potential allied reinforcements. In the North Atlantic, Russian submarines and long-range bombers equipped with Caliber cruise missiles attack U.S. naval bases and NATO facilities in Europe. Electronic warfare units disrupt NATO communications, creating confusion and delaying an effective counterattack. By initiating conflict on multiple fronts, Russia and China force the U.S. Navy to split its forces, weakening its ability to counteract concentrated attacks with its own concentrated carrier groups. Russia and China seek to achieve localized dominance in their respective theaters, denying U.S. forces the ability to operate effectively. As previously mentioned for China once more, in the Indo-Pacific, China consolidates control over the South China Sea, establishing a naval blockade around Taiwan, using its island bases to serve as unsinkable aircraft carriers, enabling sustained operations. U.S. naval forces, constrained by long supply lines, struggle to break through the A280 network. In the Arctic and North Atlantic, Russian submarines and surface ships enforce maritime exclusion zones, threatening U.S. and NATO logistics networks. The use of drones, mines, and long-range SLBMs further hampers U.S. naval movements. Russia also reinforces its positions in the eastern Mediterranean, diverting additional U.S. resources. As the conflict drags on, the combined cyber, electronic warfare, and missile strikes by Russia and China degrade U.S. command and control systems. Key U.S. naval assets, including aircraft carriers and amphibious assault ships, are neutralized, leaving U.S. forces without critical power projection capabilities. The U.S. Navy, though still formidable, finds itself unable to match the localized superiority of Russian and Chinese forces. Supply chains across the Pacific and Atlantic are disrupted, and Allied support falters under economic and military pressure. Both nations operate close to their home territories, allowing for rapid reinforcement and resupply. The U.S. must project power across vast distances, creating logistical vulnerabilities. Russian and Chinese hypersonic weapons, submarines, and integrated air defense systems could potentially outmatch U.S. capabilities in key engagements. By leveraging cyber warfare, electronic warfare, and hybrid tactics, such as sowing discourse within the United States itself, Russia and China can neutralize U.S. strengths without a direct confrontation. A multi-theater conflict forces the U.S. to allocate resources across the Indo-Pacific, Arctic, and Atlantic, diluting its ability to concentrate its forces. Both nations, realistically though mainly China, could use economic pressures such as limiting trade or disrupting global supply chains to weaken the resolve of the U.S. populace. Despite their advantages, Russia and China face significant challenges in defeating the U.S. Navy. Difference in strategic priorities and operational cultures could hinder effective collaboration. The U.S. retains advantages in stealth technology, nuclear-powered submarines, and carrier-based operations. A prolonged conflict could galvanize U.S. allies and result in severe economic and political isolation for Russia and China. While the PLAN is on track to surpass the USN in time, as of writing, its carrier forces are still no match for the sheer number of flat tops the United States can deploy. With the development of the F-35 and its variants, the USN could realistically retrofit existing hulls to support an air wing. The U.S. currently fields 9 LHA-LHDs, which have supported an air wing of up to 20 aircraft before. While the hypothetical scenarios just shown highlight pathways for the PLAN or Russian Navy to achieve localized victories, they come with significant risks and limitations. Any conflict with the USN would likely escalate into a broader war involving allies, further complicating strategic calculations. For the PLAN, success depends on maintaining a favorable balance of power in the Western Pacific, while the Russian Navy must leverage asymmetric tactics to compensate for its smaller size. Both navies must also contend with the challenge of sustaining prolonged operations against a technologically superior and globally entrenched adversary. In the long term, the rise of emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, and quantum computing could shift the balance of naval power. For example, AI-enabled decision-making and predictive analytics could enhance the effectiveness of missile strikes and countermeasures, while advances in computing could revolutionize submarine detection, as well as assist in cracking U.S. naval communications, which notably proved disastrous for the Japanese when their codes were cracked during World War II. Hypersonic weapons, with their ability to travel at unprecedented speeds and evade traditional missile defenses, could also play a decisive role. Both China and Russia are leaders in this field, with operational systems like the DF-17 and Avangard, respectively. These weapons could be used to target high-value USN assets, such as aircraft carriers and amphibious assault ships, with little to no warning. These scenarios would be heavily influenced by alliances and the involvement of other nations. The U.S. benefits from strong partnerships through NATO and bilateral agreements with its allies in the Indo-Pacific, such as Japan, South Korea, and Australia. Conversely, China and Russia may struggle to form a cohesive alliance, given their differing strategic priorities and historical tensions. However, a coordinated effort by China, Russia, and other regional powers could tip the scales. For instance, partnerships with countries like Iran or North Korea could provide additional naval and missile capabilities, such as has been seen in Ukraine, or provoke flashpoints in those respective theaters, which could further stretch U.S. forces, complicating USN operations. The ability to coordinate actions across multiple theaters would be critical for achieving a strategic advantage. A victory by Russia and/or China would signal the end of U.S. naval hegemony and the beginning of a multipolar maritime order. U.S. allies in Europe and Asia might reassess their security commitments, potentially aligning more closely to that of Russia and China. Control of key maritime zones, such as the South China Sea and the Arctic, would grant the two nations unparalleled economic and military leverage. The outcome would likely accelerate an arms race, with nations investing heavily in advanced weapons to counter the new balance of power. The global rules-based order, underpinned by U.S. naval supremacy for nearly the last 100 years, would be fundamentally reshaped, leading to a more fragmented and competitive world. In conclusion, while the theoretical defeat of the U.S. Navy by the PLAN or Russian Navy is possible under specific conditions, it would require a confluence of factors, including strategic innovation, technological advancements, and geopolitical alignment. In my uneducated, unqualified opinion, in a short-term non-nuclear conflict between the United States and China, the United States would come out victorious. Its doctrinal edge, with hundreds of years of naval warfare under its belt, gives it an incalculable edge over any peer rival. However, with how long ago this edge was sharpened, that experience becomes less and less a factor in the scenarios discussed, due to the changes in technology and doctrine. Real lessons in damage control and wartime flight operations can only be learned during exactly that, war. For brevity's sake, these scenarios also did not consider land-based air power, of which of course the United States has an overwhelming advantage in. How effective these forces would be, however, while operating in such close proximity to Chinese coastal air defense networks is a continual debate. On the other side of the coin, the ever-increasing military-industrial power of China very well may give it the edge in winning a prolonged fight. With the ability to launch new hulls, build new aircraft, and logistically support more forces, any long-term fight against the United States at sea will seriously stretch the current U.S. inventory and production power to produce new armaments, aircraft, and ships. You can't, unfortunately, purchase a fighter aircraft for the price of a used sedan anymore. They take months to produce, and depending on the airframe, cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Exponentially more so for both factors when acquiring fleet combatants. Regardless, the complexity of modern naval warfare ensures that any such conflict would be highly unpredictable in the first place, with outcomes shaped by both human ingenuity and the rapidly evolving nature of military technology. While the world can hope that these events will never happen, the converging nature of the Chinese and American spheres of influence leave me doubtful that the Pax Americana will last indefinitely.
You need an interpreter? It's time to go to school.
You will lose.